Oh, good. Great. Um, got it. So, in fact, I believe one of the first two graduates of the Cadre MFA program is here tonight. I'm correct about that? Steve, weren't you one of the earliest grads? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. So I wasn't one of the earliest grads, but I was kind of the first undergrad that ended
Uh-huh.
up being the sort of prototype for the undergraduate degree. And then
Oh, got it.
yeah.
So it's kind of
But
even
but
pre-graduate degree then.
but
Yeah.
Joe DeLapp is who you're thinking of. He is the first
I
grad.
thought you guys were in the MFA program at the same time for some reason, but you're a little bit before Joe then.
Before undergraduate, later graduate. So
Yeah, got it. Got it. So anyway, Steve's one of the founders, along with Joel Slayton of the Cadre program, which started up, I think, took its first students in 1986. Here at UC San Diego, we started our ICAM undergraduate program in 1998. And it was largely, I was at Cadre then when this started up, but it really was inspired quite a lot by Cadre. Our MFA program is a little bit different, and I'll talk about that. But I wanted to it's a good time to back up and just talk about what a Master of Fine Arts degree and the PhD degrees really are. So why, after working very, very hard for 4 years as an undergraduate, and all the hard work you did, you earn a valuable degree in the field of computing and field of arts. Why would you go on to do more education after that? And this is it's a different answer for everybody. It's a bit of a personal decision. Some people decide to go and be in the world for a little while. I certainly did that after my undergraduate degree, which was in film studies, cinema studies. And work and explore life and do all the other important things in life that young people do for a period of time before studying. Um, and for other people, it's the appropriate step to start looking for a graduate program right away. Everybody's sort of at a different place. The main difference between the Bachelor of Fine Arts degree and other kinds of advanced study is that a bachelor's degree kind of prepares people generally for strong competence in their field, and kind of it's sort of the entry level degree into most fields of study. It allows you to be a practitioner in that field in some way or another. And in the art world, these boundaries are very blurry, by the way. There are people there are very, very famous, successful artists with no degree at all. One of I know at least one BA graduate, ours is a Bachelor of Arts program, who's doing very, very well in the art world, like quite well-known person, without having an MFA. But kind of the standard for kind of professional art practice, most artists do hold a degree of MFA because it's sort of a professional finishing for you. And it's a very, very different kind of academic program than what you're doing as an undergraduate. As an undergraduate, you take classes, you participate in the academic life of your program, and you do a senior project, probably have a senior exhibition, and that's a fantastic thing. Graduate school, but you're really more learning how to operate within the field. Graduate school is fundamentally about being a researcher. And by being a researcher in the arts, it really means that you're making some original contributions to the field while you also work on things related to professional practice. Graduate students have to show art a lot. They're encouraged to show art and have programs outside of the university. And really like be engaged in the public as a public figure, practice to become a public figure, if you will, in a way that undergraduate students don't, really have time to do while you're learning more of the basics of the discipline area. So that's one aspect of being a graduate student, is just sort of greater public engagement. Obviously, you've seen artists, we talk a lot. You guys, I'm sure, all talk a lot. So it's about going to give talks about your work, say things to people about what it is you're doing. Also to kind of explore, forming contacts within the art world, meeting people within your graduate program. Just, Steve was a professor in the program, and the years that I was there, 1996 to 1999, develop professional relationships that quite often last a lifetime, but then also be exploring and trying to have accomplishments in kind of more formal art world circumstances. Frequently, there are funding opportunities that graduate students apply for to fund their work. And, both the MFA degree and the PhD degree conclude with a thesis. And they're both considered to be terminal degrees. So a terminal degree is sort of the highest degree that you can get in your field. We still maintain in the art world this kind of bifurcated idea of the important degrees in the field, which has been changing a lot in recent years. One of those degrees is the MFA, which we're talking about tonight, which is typically a 3-year degree program. The other one is a PhD. PhDs are typically 7-year programs. The MFA is kind of focused more on art practitioners, people who make art. PhD is a bit more for people that are going to be scholars with deep expertise. For example, in our MFA program, you do produce a written thesis, of course, but the main focus of the MFA program after 3 years is to mount a major exhibition of your thesis work, and have a very, very kind of public display of your work in that regard, and to work with a committee of faculty who have guided you through the process and have to approve your graduation or not based on that work that you do in the MFA program. PhDs usually involve writing a book along with that kind of thing. And another part of the shape of recent years is that there are these, and we do have a PhD praxis program that we only take 1 or 2 students a year. It's very, very competitive. But that's for people who both want to be a practicing artist, but also write a book about a topic, a full PhD thesis. So those are sort of the range of graduate study opportunities that exist in the Department of Visual Arts here at UCSD. Other things that we can talk about tonight then are, I can tell you a little bit about, the life of graduate students. We do have pretty good facilities at UC San Diego. That includes, a maker space, a wood shop, a kind of metal shop, ceramic space, computer labs, computer equipment, a big sort of media checkout thing. Students are very, very nice thing about our program is we have a lot of room to work. So graduate students get their own studio for 3 years. And largely the MFA programs, and these are the ones you really should be looking at, are fully funded MFA programs. So if you're admitted to the MFA program, your tuition is paid through block grants, in other words, no cost to you, and the work that you do, which is also part of the professional development for entry into higher academics, of either being a TA, a teaching assistant for our undergraduate classes, or in some cases being a research assistant working in the lab of a professor on campus to learn under their tutelage while you're working on sort of their research projects. That's a more common model in the sciences at UC San Diego, though it does happen sometimes that artists get funding enough to pay for a graduate student as a research assistant. So it does happen. So the facilities are nice. Maybe I'll share my screen a little bit and talk about some people, just to give you, I know we don't have much time, but just to give you a rough idea of the program. Maybe somebody can enable that when the time is right. I should tell you a little bit about who the faculty are here, and maybe just a brief, discussion of their activities and
Can you
specialties.
try sharing it again, Brett? I think I just.
Yeah, I was there we go. I think I can share my browser window. All right, so this is our website. One of the places that, as an undergraduate student, that you maybe want to, pay attention to the most about this is there's information on here about how to apply, and I can fill in some important parts of that for you later. but you might want to go look under faculty to begin with, because our graduate students actually work across the faculty, with, studio, media, even art historians who are based in our department. It's a little bit of an unusual arrangement that our full art history program is within the Department of Visual Arts. We also have an undergraduate major called speculative design. So we have the students that ICAM majors tend to work with the most are Memo Acton, who is a kind of important person in the art world for working with AI and 3D types of things. Amy Alexander, who's sort of an everything kind of artist, from performance to installation art, and a very, very well-known person in the world. Also works a lot with AI and AI related. Benjamin Bratton is one of our speculative design professors, just a really, really interesting thinker. Lisa Cartwright as well. Many of our students work with Professor Crandall, some with Teddy Cruz. Here is Ricardo Dominguez, who I started working with when I was in the MFA program at San Jose State. He was in New York at the time. We started working together, and we both accidentally kind of ended up teaching in the same department here at UC San Diego. He's the chair of our department presently. A quick note, his profile picture is the only good photograph I've ever taken. We were exploring the border between the United States and Mexico and the town of Mexicali when this incident happened. So I can talk about some of the work we do some other time. Many, many other great people that are part of this program. We're a kind of large department too, so there's a great number of people that you could potentially work with. And again, our MFA program, a little bit different from San Jose State, is really all MFA students are just MFA students. You may come in with a specialization in computing and probably work with the computing people that you planned to come here and work with, but you have access to draw from all of these other faculty members and make interesting work. Michael Trujillo, Elena Williams, Pinar Yildiz. And so I just encourage you to maybe to look at the artists that are here, because those are the people who you might be looking around to form a committee from as an MFA student. That's something that we start working on in the first year. Some just other brief things to tell you, a few little brags. This is Fabiola Hanna, who's a professor of emerging media at the New School in New York. I'm cheating here a little bit. She was actually one of our ICAM undergraduates, and went on to do her MFA and PhD at another one of the programs that you should be checking out for your personal interests, which is UC Santa Cruz. They have a number of programs, Danum and Playable Media and other things like that. So she's an ICAM related person who's doing really well in higher academics. Angela Washko has been like one of the most prominent figures in sort of computer game art in recent years. She started to become actually really famous as an artist, as an undergraduate, as a MFA student during the MFA program. She's a professor at Carnegie Mellon University in the art department there, and is an important part of their MFA program. Her work in computer games and art is super interesting. And that, by the way, Carnegie Mellon University, where she teaches, is also kind of one of the places that I imagine would be very, very attractive for cadre undergraduates, and they would be very attracted to the profile of most cadre undergraduates. And then here's another thing. This is also, I won't play it for you. This is a famous project called Becoming Dragon by Misha Cardenas, which is a pretty representative of sort of the best of the thesis projects it gives you a strong idea of what a thesis project at the MFA level looks like. What Misha did as a trans individual This is at the precise moment when she began hormone therapy, previous to gender confirmation surgery. But her project was also to live 365 days in Second Life, which is an online virtual world environment where she would perform as a dragon. And she's raising questions about, the requirement that transgender people wait for a year before gender confirmation surgery, and really operating very, very interestingly as a performance artist, and is now a professor at UC Santa Cruz. So within computing and the arts, there are these programs that have a lot of connections and flow between them. Other places you could be looking at are places like New York University's ITP program, School of Visual Arts in New York, New School, and other UCs. UC Santa Barbara has kind of an amazing MFA program as well. So I just, that's all I was going to share with you in terms of web. So I'm going to stop the share now. Definitely look that project up, because she really did spend close to 2 weeks with the head mounted display on at all time, reading poetry and doing work inside of this 3D environment. And it kind of became a kind of one of the instant classics, I think, of virtual reality art in general. So yeah, I guess this is the point where, I'd like to ask you, I mean, I've explained sort of what MFA programs are and what MFA programs are like. I'd like to ask you if you have any questions, because the kinds of things we can talk about are tips on the application process, other questions you may have, about really anything that you want to talk about. I'm here to serve in any way that you're interested in being served. So maybe I'll throw the floor open for questions now.
I have a question.
Hi.
Hello. My name is Nayana. My question is, how would you recommend getting your art more publicized outside of social media?
Yeah, social media, so one thing is to look for the nascent thing, like the new thing. And that's a bit of a gamble in life, right? I'm on, I quit Twitter in a fit of rage, and switched over to Mastodon. And very interesting things are happening on Mastodon, but as a young social media site, you don't know if it's going to become one of the big things. But it's kind of like, try to find early social media and new things in the next things and get involved in those. Other than that, though, I think it's really, really important to get involved in the world of, going to conferences, going to meetings, going around to art exhibitions and meeting other people. The real part of an MFA, many MFA programs, but especially places like very, very expensive private for-profit schools like Cal Arts and CCA, a big part of those programs are the access that they give you to people in certain industries and certain positions of power. USC is another good program and kind of famous for that as well. So, but the general idea, to answer your question, is meet people, be with people, develop your networks that way, show your art, apply for a lot of exhibitions. Go ahead and take your work and apply. This is good for young artists. Apply for the File Festival, which is a wonderful computing in the arts festival that takes place annually every summer for us in Sao Paulo, Brazil. But their strategy is they accept a lot of artists. They have a really, really big exhibition space, kind of a giant space. 200,000 people see the exhibition, even though it's only up for 2 weeks. But that's a great place to go to meet other artists from around the world. And I guess the last thing, it's something that I did during graduate school, is just email people you're interested in. At the time I was in graduate school at Cadre, and there was a, important professor, maybe somebody you've heard of, Lev Manovich, who's an important media theorist. He taught here at the time I was in graduate school. He's since moved on to the SUNY, the State University of New York Graduate School in New York City is where he is these days. But I just emailed him and started talking to him. And, I had all the hubris of being, an MFA student talking to a professor in another program, saying, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing. And, you never know how, an email question that you have, or, something that you want to know from an artist who you respect and admire their work, you never know if they're going to maybe start a conversation with you or not, or where that can lead. So, I think there's a certain social butterfly aspect to it that's important.
Thank you.
It's a good question.
Thank you. I have one more question.
Sure.
So what do you think makes a strong artist statement?
Yeah, this is something we can talk about in terms of applying, because it's a little bit, there are different artist statements, right? One kind of artist statement is the kind of artist statement that's really about you, that's going to be on your website. And, it really just demonstrates who you are. It's very important, like who you are and how that relates to the kind of art you make, why you make art, and what you're doing. And, there's a sort of a special responsibility for computing artists to be able to textually, because the public doesn't know everything we know. Quite often we're working with new technologies that people don't know about yet, or don't have a strong familiarity with. So having that artist statement sort of explain like your media, your medium, the things that you're working with, whether that be a computer programmer who's using programs to create imagery and sort of the traditions of generative design, or somebody who's working in robotics and sculpture, kinetic sculpture, somebody who's a performance artist, explain kind of what it is you do as well. And it never hurts to put some good brags in there in the artist statement, right? That where you've shown work, exhibitions that you've had, maybe some important links from your CV. So that's kind of generic advice about an artist statement. It just lets somebody know quickly who you are, what you're about. It's a very quick drink, but it's also meant to be, something that gets people a little excited and interested in what it is that you do and attract the right kind of people to you. But now there's a very similar, many graduate programs will ask for a letter of interest, which is a little bit of a different thing. And sometimes they call it an artist statement. And a letter of interest and an artist statement, well, when you're applying for graduate school, if they ask for a letter of interest, an artist statement, they really mean letter of interest, even if they use the other term. And so that's your introduction letter to the people who might be admitting you. So that's a combination of artist statement plus, and the plus is, who do you want to work with in that program? Why are you applying to UC Santa Cruz's MFA program versus, well, you don't have to compare us, but like, who is it at UC Santa Cruz who you're interested in working with? Not only explaining what your art and your practice is, and by the way, in the application process, you'll also submit a visual portfolio of your projects as well. So it will help sort of, people read something, then look at the project. So that kind of helps faculty put together the whole picture of who that artist is. So it's good to have that tuned a little bit to the work they're going to see, which should be natural anyway. But also, like, I'm really interested in this. Amy Alexander is there, who's really interested in surveillance and surveillance and video installation art. And I do video installation art with surveillance, and I think I can learn a lot about computer vision from Professor Alexander. That kind of thing really, really helps. Graduate programs like to see like what your research program is, what you are, because you're proposing to come and do something that, like I said earlier, is an original contribution to the art world, or to the arts, or to whatever field it is you're applying for. You're proposing to come there and do original research and make a new original contribution to the field. So faculty are going to kind of be thinking about that. Like, what is this person going to come here and do? So tell us that, and who you want to work with. So letter of interest, a little bit different than artist statement. Artist statement's a little bit more for a general public, and a letter of interest is a little bit more explaining your art, your research program, and kind of why you chose that particular graduate program. That can also relate to resources, and it can relate to people that are not in the art department. Maybe there's a sociologist or a computer scientist or an ethnic studies professor who's here, whose work you're really interested in. And, there's somebody that you might want to, be around in some way or another, or maybe invite, or have a relationship with and ask them to serve on your committee or something like that, because that's a very common thing too. As an MFA, you form a committee. It's, sometimes it's very common to have 4 professors on your committee, one of them from outside of your department. So maybe they're just other scholars who you're very interested in, so that we can kind of make the relationship between the place and you and how you're going to uniquely benefit from, say, coming to UC San Diego.
Thank you so much.
I see a hand up.
Hi, my name is Khan, and I also have a question for you.
Sure.
So after I hearing that, you said we can go out and then apply for an exhibition to make us have more work to show off with everyone, right? So when I go to school, I also apply for the exhibition, but school give us the opportunity to have the exhibition. But when we go out live, how can we apply for it? Can you give me some example or some program that I can apply for an exhibition?
Are you asking about how to apply for exhibitions?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it part of it is like knowing where they are.
I think
And
part
of
of it is
course,
also but before school and after school, like after graduation kind of stuff.
yeah, after graduation. Yeah. Well, number one is finding the organizations. So computing in the arts is Steve will attest to this. Like, it's one of the things that we teach a little bit about in our intro class. Is like, where is computer art? Where is the kind of thing that Cadre does in the world? And where is it shown? Where is it digested? Where is it talked about? One thing that you might want to do is to find out about opportunities is join the New Media Caucus, which students can join for free. That is a group that's part of the College Art Association. The New Media Caucus is the official body of the College Art Association, which has a major convention every year that talks specifically about new media. And, there are even opportunities to work with them or write for them and publish and have your art digested in one way or another. As undergraduates, not so much, but as MFA candidates, definitely there are great opportunities that appear through that. In fact, I believe Dorothy Santos, who maybe many of you know, was part of New Media Caucus for a period of time. I seem to have that memory. So that way you get information about the field. That's one of the places to go looking. Another place so the world of international art festivals is also like the place where the specialization and sort of computing related and media art takes place. And there are a number of festivals that some of them are in places. I already mentioned the File Festival in Sao Paulo, Brazil is a really, really big one. That's been kind of a fixture or a long-time permanent one. The grandparent of all new media arts festivals is Ars Electronica, which is in Europe. ISEA, the Inter-Society for Electronic Arts, is another professional organization that has an annual conference. And, as a professional practicing artist with projects, these events have exhibitions. And so that's sort of how you start looking around for opportunities to apply. But the second thing is the little bit harder one, but it's really, really important for all artists, regardless of your field, is that you have to make your own luck a lot in our world. As a young artist, I was really lucky to, join an art critique group in a town after I finished my bachelor's degree. And that art critique group held exhibitions from time to time. And what we would do is we would look for closed commercial real estate. And we'd find out who owned that and see if they wanted to donate it to us for a month, with the idea that having an art exhibition in there would make it look more attractive to people who might want to actually rent it. Now, this was a time when there was a lot of empty commercial real estate, like there is now, with malls closing and what the like and whatnot. So, it was like making our own exhibitions, having a group of artists that you worked with, that you were interested in, who talked about each other's work, and then getting together and making your work public in some way, having an opening reception for it, inviting the whatever community that you're involved with. I don't know what's going on with Works Gallery in San Jose, but this is one of the kind of community spaces where there's frequent opportunities for artists who are just doing interesting things, no matter where they're from, to show their work. Works is, a fixture in San Jose. I think some turbulence in recent years, right, Steve? They moved or something.
Yeah, but they're actually they're doing quite well now. They found a
Oh, they're
place.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
They found a new place. So places like Works Gallery,
Yeah.
local community kinds of art galleries. And you get into those places by being, just part of their social environment. My wife shows it a lot of her work at a community gallery in Escondido, California. It's not famous artists, but it's a very, very like engaged, active local art community. And she's a painter, and she regularly shows paintings in that show. So look for your community art galleries too, because a lot of this is just being in the habit of making your own luck, making your own exhibitions, making luck for your friends by doing group exhibitions together and things like that.
I was just going to add, just to follow up with what Brett was saying, is in terms of making your own luck, is that often, every generation of artists get out of school and they come across this sort of confrontation of what the rest of the world is in relationship to them. And of course, there are all these things that he's talking about, which are all good, like SIGGRAPH and ISEA and Ars Electronica, and there's other ones that are I can't really remember now.
They come and go.
Yeah. Come and go, exactly. But I think also it's like sometimes it's also a recognition of what's missing, that you recognize, like, well, I see all these things, but I don't see myself as an artist there for various reasons too. And this is why often, galleries are made, or artists figure out a new way to share their work, because just the previous generation didn't really address their sensibilities, or was not that same audience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how, like a new private gallery is made, or a new new
nonprofit, or a new
nonprofit, or like turning sideshows into art projects, and like all the cultural vernacular that's out in the world, they can also be encompassed into your art practice. And that's the way you show stuff. So like Brett said, maybe you find abandoned buildings, or maybe you find a place where they're having storefronts that are not being used, and use as an opportunity to do something that no one thought of doing before, right? Like that there's a niche that you find for yourself. And I think that's something that allows you to, it's very liberating. It's also a lot of work, but it also allows you to sort of get experience, because you kind of just literally make it almost up from your bootstraps. It wasn't there before, the day before, and now it is there. And so I think that can't be underestimated when you're looking for just places to start and so forth.
And sometimes it's just weird, sometimes it doesn't gain traction, but it's weird and cool, and you can still show it to other people. Paula and I kind of did a project like that. We bought some lots of land in the desert for like $5 each in a really remote location, and we went and built a small museum there in the middle of nowhere, where mostly it's us and our friends and undergraduate students in the ICAM program who show their work there, called the Calzona Museum, because it's close to a ghost town in Southern California called Calzona. And it's really just an outdoor museum with a bunch of, it has solar panels and a lot of stuff. And it's the only people that really ever find it are people like riding around on motorcycles. And it does take a Jeep to get there, but we kind of made the world we wanted. We wanted to make something weird in the desert, and we made something weird in the desert. And even though it never really took off as a very popular thing, it still kind of became part of our practice of which, Paul and I, we work a lot out in the deep desert now. I do some like installations that are in the middle of nowhere with solar panels and radio and stuff like that.
So I was going to sort of ask you that, because I had two questions for you. That was one of them, which was, are you still, how would I say, making installations on the border so that people could use it as a place of rest? And how do you describe that in the first place?
Well, okay, so one of the Ricardo Dominguez and I, this kind of started between Cadre and New York City, actually, and a few other places in the world, including Texas. But I'm a founding member of a group called the Electronic Disturbance Theater that you can look up. But there was a particular project that almost got Ricardo fired from UCSD that we made as a group. It's a long story. It was very, very racist, them going after Ricardo. I'm a white person, and I wrote the software for the project. They didn't think maybe to come try to fire me, but luckily that embarrassed them enough that they, let the white people off the hook, that they never fired Ricardo, among other reasons. He hadn't really done anything wrong. It was all kind of fake. But that project was a project for mobile phones, that we wrote software that could find water stations. And there's a group that I continue to volunteer with called Water Stations along the border, and we put water out along the border. They're literally stations like blue barrels full of gallons of water with big flags on them so people can see them. EDT, Electronic Disturbance Theater, got very, very inspired by this and thought we could write software for pre-iPhone mobile phones. So this is more like, we start having this idea around the time that the iPhone is coming out, but there were other mobile phones that had operating systems that you could deploy software to that had GPS. So we had the idea that we could write some software that would direct people, if people were lost in the desert, they could solve the last mile problem, as it's sometimes called, and get close enough to one of these water safety resource sites. And it was also a poetic project. It would read them poetry that had desert survival tips built into the poetry. And it had different modalities for helping them navigate to places. So we did this, and we hadn't even really released the software when it was I don't know if anybody knows who this this person is anymore. Glenn Beck. Have you heard of Glenn Beck? Anybody? He used to be on Fox News. When he left Fox News, he started this website called The Blaze. And we were actually the first story on this conservative right-wing news site. It was something like, artists used GPS to destroy United States, or something like that. I forget exactly what they were accusing us of, but
So powerful.
it was, yeah. And it was, but anyway, so it became a big right-wing kerfuffle, and we got doxxed a lot. And this is back in 2008, 2009. We had, a constant wave of death threats. We still had a few Republican Congress people in the San Diego area at that time. They wrote a letter to the chancellor of the university, accusing Ricardo of aiding and abetting illegal immigrants. And that's when they decided to fire him, but not me. That it turned into actually kind of an awful story for all of us personally. Sometimes you do provocative art and you pay a little bit of a price for it. It was very expensive for Ricardo, and we were all giving Ricardo money, and people from around the art world were giving Ricardo money for lawyers before this whole thing went away. But anyway, it ends up being still like a fairly well-known art project that's had its gallery version of it shown around the world. Ironically, no immigrant ever got one of our mobile phones with our software on it because Google. Google Maps came out shortly after that, and there was no need for our software because shortly after that, every immigrant carried a mobile phone with GPS and Google Maps on it. So, our idea got kind of erased by the reality of giant corporations and really honestly better tools than we could write, but not poetic tools like we did write. So anyway, that's one of the projects that was a research project here at San Diego. And in fact, we did have a number of graduate students working on that project. One of them was Misha Cardenas, who I mentioned earlier, and Ellie Marmond is another one. Let me share my screen again real quick. Let's go back to the web. There's kind of a 3.0 version. So this is an article. That's me with the antenna. This was a performance art piece that we did as part of the Mexicali Biennale, which is an art show that takes place between the cities of Mexicali and Calexico. This is the Calexico side. So I'm still working with Ricardo on electronic disturbance theater. We were flying drones around and making the Border Patrol angry while we read poetry, things like that. I'll quit sharing now, but I'll give you a link to a video about it in case you want to take a look at it. Well, if it'll let me quit sharing, there we go. So, that's some of the kinds of work that I'm still involved in. Any other questions? Like maybe about graduate school? Do you want me to tell you some random things about it?
Sure.
Share some hacks for, I think Steve can help me with this a lot too. Can also share some hacks. So when you apply for a graduate program, there's going to be a group of people, usually a large group of people, evaluating the applications, right? So sometimes you want to think about those people that are evaluating evaluating these. We get 200 applications every year, sometimes 250. Before COVID, we would get over 300. And we admit, this is going to sound scary, we admit, I think next year we're going to take 8 MFA students, right, out of the stack of sometimes close to 300 applications. So what stands out for us and for art programs and for MFA programs is really what you're doing as an artist and like I said earlier, what you're proposing to do when you come here. And we like to see beautiful documentation of the work. So whatever it is you're making, be sure to collect really beautiful documentation that shows the work in its best light, because you might be giving us URLs to show the work. You might be providing a PDF with pictures of the work, but the better that looks, the more likely it is to kind of like be that application out of 300 applications that we all go, whoa, this is a very interesting artist who's different from the other ones, who knows what art is, who understands the discipline area, knows why they're applying for an MFA. Those are the kinds of things that are, just remember that there are going to be groups of people on the other side looking at these applications, and it's like popping off the stack is one of the first things to do. You do that partially with your letter of intent or your statement, but you also do that partially with the visuals and the quality of the documentation about your work that you're presenting to us as well. So that's kind of a hack, is to look behind the scenes. I have another small hack for you. In a program like UC San Diego's, there are lots of art departments in the world that produce students who apply for MFA programs. A lot. right? So there are a lot of applications for MFA programs, but schools internally have their kinds of needs also. We do have needs. The largest one for us is teaching assistants. So you're all in a very, very good position. Like if you've studied with Professor Duree and done electronics and stuff, because we are always looking through that stack for people for artists who understand electronics. We're also always looking for that stack, through that stack, for artists who are programmers. Is that James Morgan? Hey, it's my old friend James. Hi. Wow, good to see you. I love your hat.
Thank you.
I think I got a little bit of my fashion sense from you.
Yes, perhaps.
Not except it should be black, I know.
Only one of us can be perfect.
So it's like you've got
Yeah.
this, you got this.
Yeah.
part and
I'm
you
never
got
going to
this
catch
part-
up with Professor Morgan in terms of fashion. It's just not going to happen. As you can see, I suffer a little bit. But yeah, so that, that's another thing is when you're examining and maybe Steve and maybe Professor Morgan has a comment too about like kind of what stands up in the stack. Oh, I was going to mention computer programming. So we have a big class that's a little different from your Art 74 class, but kind of similar. Things are divided up a little bit different between our classes in the undergraduate program. But in our version of that class where we talk about histories of computing in the arts and like, talk about VR art and computer game art and artificial intelligence art and all of the sort of, major categories of computing in the arts and introduce students to those. Students are also learning the basics of programming. So computer people that are, have done projects with computer programming, as you all have, are very, very attractive in the stack. And that's one of the things that tends to get you to pop off the stack quite a little bit. You might even look at our classes in our catalog of classes and say, I think I'd be a very good TA in your classes Viz 141A and Viz 141B, which are computer programming in the arts. Or I might be a very, very good TA in Viz 147A and Viz 147B. Now that would be for here at UC San Diego, but you can go look at the catalog since you all are artists, good artists, but with special skills. It doesn't hurt to look at what they're teaching in a program and position yourself as being like very, very useful to the program.
I was just going to say that I think your general observation though is to think about the whole ecosystem that you work within. If you're applying for a university, think about what the university's point of view is on all this, what their needs are. And I think that the big thing with applications and portfolios is this, balancing this desire to show who you are as an individual and showing your strong work, but also understand that you are part of a process where lots of people are looking at this stuff and you need, like Brett says, to have some of it sort of pop. So it does come down sometimes to making a really clever, beautiful image that will catch someone's eye and slow them down from going to the next person for a moment. Like looking at that going, oh, that's interesting. And getting them
that
out.
whoa moment in the documentation. Like, wow, what's that?
Now, yeah.
I don't know what that is. I have to know more.
They have to set it aside because they might be literally sorting, hundreds of things. And this could be.
Oh, we do.
For
we do. We still put them. Yeah. We're online now, but we have it's an online system now. Yeah, I don't know how you guys are doing it, but we rate them. The whole faculty looks through all of them. We divide the job up a little bit based on our areas, which are, like I said, are studio art and media and ICAM, computing in the arts, and speculative design. Some of you, might have more of a speculative design orientation, but so a smaller group of faculty are going to be looking at those particular things, but it still might be 40 or 50 or 100 applications depending on the area. So, how do you fit into the ecosystem that includes both having an interesting proposal as what you're going to come to the program to do, your research program, but also kind of like how you're useful, how you're going to TA, how that's going to be part of paying for the program. And I know some people got here a little after I started talking, but the many MFA programs are free. Well, not free, but the way we do it at UC San Diego is it's a combination of block grants that we get from the university, and the work that you do here as a TA or as a research assistant can all go toward completely paying for the tuition. Rent not included, which I will acknowledge immediately is as big a giant expensive problem in San Diego as it is in San Jose. Two very expensive places. So, I think you all know how to negotiate that terrain in some way or another, either through your own experience or your peers. It is an expensive place. So that's one of the disadvantages of our program. Huge advantage, though, is a lot of artists come here who want to work with the border. San Diego's a lovely town, but at the end of the day, it's not a, important art city in the world. We're kind of a suburb that's tucked between two important art cities, one of them being Los Angeles, the other one being Tijuana, which is like internationally a very, very important art city. So we have this kind of proximity to both of these other areas that are important for art and art making. And there's a lot of, especially the people come to San Diego who really do kind of want to be situated in one way or another around the wide variety of border art practices that take place. Another one of our professors who's very interesting in that regard, who you should definitely look up, is Professor Teddy Cruz, who is an architect, in fact, but he does architecture across the border, if you will. Super interesting. Okay, I see you have a study group coming up. Important thing. You have finals to take and things to finish up. So I just want to say thank you for having me as a guest tonight. We would love to see your applications in the stack. Feel free to contact me if you have any more questions. I had the best experience of my life at Cadre. I'm a big supporter of it, so I'm in the bag for all of you as well. So do reach out if it's something you're interested in learning more about. Okay.
Thank you, Brett. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you
so
all, and
much.
good night.
Thank you.
Good
night.
luck good luck on finals or whatever it is coming up.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.